The teachings we're talking about over the course of this fall are drawn from the Steps to the Great Perfection. It's a wonderful book translated by Courtney Dahl, Steps to the Great Perfection. There are many, many ways of practicing and approaching practice. And one of those that was very, very popular in Tibet was called mind training. Mind is low and Jong is training, mind training. And this particular text from the Nyingma tradition is actually another tradition of mind training, and it's oriented toward Dzogchen, the great completeness. And it's got a slightly different flavor to it. And it's, so when we think about training our minds, one of the things I want to say as a Western therapist and a Western teacher is that it's important to think of spiritual practice in a context of bringing a friend to yourself and a friend to your mind. When talking about mind training in the Tibetan tradition, there is often three phases that are outlined. One is hearing. In Tibetan, that's cheba. There's contemplating, which is samba. And then there's meditating, gomba. And hearing really can be anything like reading something or hearing it in a teaching. And contemplating is really taking it in, turning it over, considering it both emotionally and intellectually, but finding a sweet spot that is a marriage of thought and feeling is something that I think we as Westerners actually have to work at. And then we sit with that conclusion and allow it to permeate mind and body. We use something like mindfulness of the breath. It's like a magnifying glass that you see the rays of the sun are diffused, but the magnifying glass focuses the rays of the sun to make them able to create fire. It's got power. The glass focusing the rays gives the light power, and similarly, meditation gives the mind power. It gives it a facility, an ability to do. And so when we have focused the mind first, and then we hear something, read something, we do some contemplation, and then we settle. But we have that facility to focus. Meditation can create a deep sense of spaciousness and a deep sense of effectiveness. It's an interesting paradox that as the mind is spacious, it can actually feel quite strong and effective and very, very powerful. So I'll just review what I've brought to mind here. One is that we're talking about this semester living wisdom, and we're doing it within a Buddhist context. When we are going to undertake a practice of training the mind, we want to be a friend of our minds and our practice. Very, very important in training the mind to be able to balance thought with emotion. And when we are doing training of the mind training, we will typically engage with some process of hearing or reading. We will contemplate, and then we will meditate.
Completeness is really a holy state. Wholeness is holy. And we are, as Harvey has said, we are speaking here in a Buddhist framework, and we are very particularly also oriented toward Dzogchen, the great completeness. And the work of the 7 steps to Dzogchen, that Harvey, to the great perfection, it's translated. Dzogchen can be translated as great perfection. also as great completeness. I like completeness because it's a very soothing state. And I think that is part of what is intended by this name. Everything is complete. There's nothing that is left out. So you don't have to worry that sooner or later you're going to have to go find something else. You don't have to worry that you've kicked out someone or some part of yourself that you're going to need later. It means you don't have to fight against anything because everything is included. Samsara, nirvana, the hells, the heavens, your good qualities, your terrible, poisonous qualities, complete. Everything is present. And allowing that possibility is, I think, a holy state. The 7 steps of mind training, he used the word, and he called this a instruction on the meaning, Chun-Tri, which you may also know is a very powerful statement within the Dzogchen context. It actually unites the practicality of instructions that are going to tell you how to, how do we get from here to the place where I can clean up the corner of my room or write the letter that I've been postponing for way too long. We get there partly through a certain kind of training. And interestingly enough, this word training in Tibetan can also mean purification. So purifying, training. Some people translate it as refining. You're like refining away, somehow getting clear of whatever impedes. And these instructions are simple. And it's interesting to recognize that for Longchenpa, when he lists a few books, a handful of books that he says, if you really want the essence of the whole thing, this one, he mentions this text. And there's great wisdom in opening up to our completeness, to our own lived experience. Opening up to our actual lived experience is part of our training as practitioners. The good and the bad. Now, since we're talking about completeness, is, we won't have the whole of our wisdom if we can't look at the whole of our ignorance. Because where is that wisdom? It's not somewhere else. It's right there with us and with everything. And it's impactful for me, and therefore I share with you, how absolutely clear Longchenpa made it that this specific text is essential for Dzogchen, is at the very heart and pith of the path itself. It's a foundation. Adzam Rinpoche himself, when he taught it, which he only did twice, and then when I saw him a year or two after that, he said to teach it, he said, because anyone who has this as a foundation will have completely what they need for successful practice. I'll sign my name to it. And he used to do that. Some of you may remember when he used his signature. That's like, God's signature. I'll sign my name to it. These key instructions on the foundational practice of the 7 mind trainings serve as steps that lead to our own primordial nature. That is our aspiration. Steps that lead to our own primordial nature. Yeah, Wendy.
First of all, thank you for that wonderful teaching, both of you. Wow.